The reckless reality of life in the 1960s. The 1960s were a thrilling era to experience. Society was undergoing significant transformations. Social movements and popular culture played an influential role in propelling progress. However, numerous behaviors considered acceptable in Western culture during the 1960s would now be sneered at, considered unlawful, or simply ridiculous. Let us watch the video and uncover the various and favorable aspects of everyday life that were accepted during this time. Pregnancy. Many pregnant women in the 1960s smoked and consumed alcohol. Smoking was encouraged. Smoking was heavily promoted, even endorsed by physicians through advertisements. Relaxed rules while flying. There was limited awareness regarding the negative effects of smoking, so it was a widespread habit. Smoking was commonly permitted on airplanes, even when small children were present. Airport security. Airport security didn't become a significant concern until the 1970s, following a series of well-publicized hijackings. During the 1960s, passengers were allowed to bring almost anything on board without much scrutiny. Metal detectors and regular bag searches were not yet implemented. Car safety. Seat belts and car safety were not given much consideration during the 1960s. Drinking and driving. In fact, drinking and driving was generally acceptable in most countries worldwide at that time. People would need to be quite unlucky or heavily intoxicated to encounter legal issues due to drinking and driving. Childproofing was rare. Child safety products and home modifications were not widely implemented. Schooling. Corporal punishment was widely accepted in schools, with a common practice of using a ruler to strike misbehaving children's knuckles. Physical punishment. It was considered appropriate in schools because, naturally, it was a commonly used method of disciplining children at home as well. Unsupervised children. As women started working instead of staying at home, children would often be left to fend for themselves as both parents were occupied with their jobs throughout the day. The dangers of sun exposure were unknown. Generally, sunscreen was not utilized as individuals were unaware of the risks of prolonged exposure to UV rays on their skin. Cycling safety. People participated in cycling events and recreational activities without wearing helmets. People ate what they wanted. In the 1960s, dietary understanding was limited, and individuals freely consumed abundant amounts of sugar in their diets. Pretty much everybody got married. According to Psychology Today, people who didn't want to get married during this period were regarded as abnormal. Your home was a dangerous place to be. Asbestos was a frequently used material for home insulation. It was not uncommon for individuals to come into contact with this hazardous substance on a regular basis. The photograph depicts a production worker handling a piece of asbestos material. Drinking water wasn't completely safe either. The risks of lead poisoning were not yet understood, leading to widespread exposure to hazardous levels of lead in drinking water. Record players. For the majority of individuals, aside from tuning in to the radio, the sole option to enjoy music was through a record player. Music festivals were booming. Music festivals as we know them today originated in the 1960s, prior to which they were modest and didn't entail extensive security, regulation, or organization. Surfing gained increasing popularity during the 1960s time period. Televisions people used to watch their favorite shows on limited program black and white televisions. Rock and roll was the top music genre. Rock and roll music flourished in the 1960s, thanks to renowned bands such as Pink Floyd, the Beatles, and the Jimi Hendrix Experience. Telephones. During the early 1960s, rotary phones were becoming less popular, while touch-tone telephones were gaining popularity. Beach gatherings. California in the 1960s witnessed a popular trend: beach parties. Birth control. The contraceptive pill was made accessible to women in 1962, and within 3 years, countless women in the U.S. were using it. Milkmen. During the early and mid-1960s, it was common for milk to be delivered to people's homes by the milkman on a daily basis. This practice diminished as it became more convenient and affordable to purchase milk from the grocery store. Comic books were highly popular. In the early 1960s, comic books were still popular as they had been throughout the 1950s, although they began to drop off in popularity in the later years of the decade. Men had long hair. Men in the 1960s embraced a trend of long hair. Health clubs grew in popularity during the 1960s. Dinner in a box. TV dinners in a box are still commonly found today, but they gained popularity in the 1960s due to limited knowledge about nutritional science. Thanks for watching.